Anyway, we have Port City architects here. We also have members of the Fire and Rescue Committee here. So I think we'll start off with Port City architects. Andy, if you're ready to go.
Sure. Let's forget that all set up. It's usually the hardest part.
Yeah, breeze right through it.
All right. Well, I can kind of see folks too. Okay. All right. Hey. So, hi, I'm Andy Highland with Port City Architecture. Oh, already. Are we having technical difficulties, Terry?
Go.
Okay.
Of course, we weren't on live
press
television
it.
then.
I didn't press the key
Did it before, but we weren't on live television.
Oh,
I
dear.
didn't press any other buttons.
All right. Let's see, yeah. I was gonna say you could take that, but what good does it do? All right, let me get.
Okay, all right, let's start that again. Hi, I'm Andy Highland with Port City Architecture. Back in, I guess it was the end of 2023, the town put out an RFP for architects and interviewed some architecture firms and selected us to take a look at studying a central fire emergency building. Did I get the title right? Okay, close. And the purpose is to kind of supplement you got 3 volunteer fire departments and to really help supplement the volunteer fire departments that exist. And this one would be able to take, full-time staff. And basically it's just to ensure that the town is always going to have good fire and EMS coverage 24/7. And so not taking away the existing volunteer stations, but just trying to supplement them. So on our team, I'm president of Port City Architecture, Curtis, sitting there in the front row with me, and Tom Saucier was our civil engineer on this study. Okay? I feel like this is too loud. Am I? Is everybody okay? Is it all right? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So what we do and what we did in the study. First thing we do is, before we put pen to paper, is really start to do a program. And we interviewed all the chiefs and started to come up with how many apparatus bays do you need? Do you need some bunk rooms if people are going to stay there overnight? Everything, offices, everything in the facility. And that yielded, after we put everything and tabulated everything, a building that was about 13,646 square feet. And that is in line. Go ahead, I think on the clicking. That's in line with other towns. We do a lot of these, so we probably got, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 stations under our belt in the last 5 or 10 years. And that seems to be in line with other similar sized towns. And the size needs. So a lot of times we have to go through and find a site for the building, but in this case, you already had one. There's really kind of only one spot. The town owns a bunch of this land up here, but a lot of it's pretty vertical. So we took a look and we're able to kind of fit it. It's actually going to go right where the road that goes up to the transfer station is. So that'll be relocated around it a little bit. And there's room in between, right on that road. Good sight lines. Go ahead to the next one. So that's Mountain Road. The town hall where we are is like kind of just up and to the left off of the screen. And the orange block on the right is the television building. And that other little orange block is, I think, where you keep an ambulance right now. So this is kind of paramedic, yeah. And so this is where it's going. You can kind of see underneath where the access road up to the transfer station is, and be kind of right on there. We took a look at some of your environmental studies that had been done before. There's a little creek that runs down the side there, and they had identified a couple of wetlands and vernal pools. So we've kept this far enough away to, if they're still there, to be able to, not affect any of the wetlands and vernal pools. Okay? Just taking a look at the floor plan itself. We've got 3 apparatus bays and room to expand for a 4th on the left. The top areas are some bunk rooms, really kind of living area. So this is designed to be able to be staffed. It's also got a lot of modern accoutrements, but modern features in it. And a lot's changed since fire barns used to get built and fire stations got built. We've learned a lot about safety and also for firefighting personnel. The building to be designed up to modern standards, and it's really kind of keeping anything that gets off on the equipment or on your clothes in a fire. And I said, when you think about it now, half of your homes are probably plastic and vinyl. So when a fire burns, there's a lot of contaminants that are associated with it and in the smoke. So the idea is to really kind of rinse off at the sites what you can't. There's a decontamination room there and areas to decontaminate the apparatus. And then the whole building's pressurized so as to kind of keep any kind of contaminants from entering the living areas. And that's, to keep everybody safer and healthier in the department. There's a small area for fitness. A lot of people ask, well, why can't they just get gym memberships somewhere? It's, because you're on call, you're stuck at the station, and so when somebody's on duty, that's really their only opportunity. So a small area to keep working out. And again, it's a pretty stressful profession, and I think fitness and health is also another feature that really is important in firefighting and EMS duties these days. Okay, and if anybody has any questions, I'm easy to, I can roll with the punches, I guess. So feel free to ask.
I have one.
Sure.
Up towards the television station, there's only about 6 inches of soil over ledge, and you talked about moving up that way. Have you taken that into account, blasting out ledge? Or?
Yeah. So so this would be designed to be a slab on grade. So we try to minimize. There's no kind of excavated areas. So there'll be some kind of leveling out of the area, but for most part, it'll be concrete and foundation just right on ledge. That's not unusual. When I moved here 40 years ago from Colorado, I thought all these sites were horrible. They were all rock, and where everything we had out there was prairie of 100 feet.
Well, I'm just talking about Community Drive is on ledge. There's not much under that. And then beyond that is all ledge.
Yeah. So there'll be some area of fill, and also this is kind of fallen. If you go up there, walk up there, there's a little bit of a ravine. Well, a lot of bit of a ravine right next to it. So the idea there would be that we'd bury some very large concrete cistern tanks, because we'll need fire protection there. So we'd have water for fire protection, and also maybe some sewage disposal tanks. Again, if we're rinsing some equipment off, to not get that in the ground, that we could test, make sure that the water was okay before it went into a leach field. So we're going to try to use the site, but we walked all around, and that's really the only kind of feasible option in that spot. So, we're already to rough costs. Okay, so we're good at this right now, just because we have a lot of fire stations in various, areas of, like, some are done, some are just starting. So we have a lot of recent data on turnkey prices. And for a station like this, and what we do out of this one would be kind of wood framed for the living areas, and then spray foam insulation, super insulated, super efficient building. And we look at about $550 a foot. Some bays we do out of conventional steel framing and wood. We're working with the committee. Oh, and also we were able to drop this down from our original program area from 13.6 to just under 12,000, so it's 11.9, which we were able to save some money through some efficiency. So if we did it out of conventional steel and the apparatus bays and wood, it'd be about $6.5 million. We're working with the committee. One of the things that we've been working on to do, if you want to go ahead to the next slide, is building the living areas out of the wood, super insulated buildings, and using pre-engineered frames for the apparatus bays, which don't need to be kept at 72 degrees. And the doors go up and down a lot. So we're working with the committee to save. It's probably about $500,000 to go to pre-engineered on the bays. So we're looking at traditional wood-framed, very efficient building on the living side, and a pre-engineered apparatus bay. Still efficient as possible on the left, and just shy about $6 million. Okay. This is just our rendering of it. So you're kind of on Mountain Road, looking to, that's sitting, like I said, right on where that driveway going up to the transfer station is. So the right side be, I think, in keeping with what you might see in Harpswell in Maine, be engineered siding, but to look like clapboard. Go ahead on the next. On the left, and we'll try to see what we can do, to try to not make it look so pre-engineered, but and we might be able to work with some materials to soften that up. But on the left side would be the apparatus base. I think we might have another on here. Yep. And then this is kind of at the side where really the front entrance is. So Mountain Road is just kind of on your left, skirting by. So this is really the front door of the building. And there might be one more. I'm not sure. Nope. So that's what it's going to look like. So the next steps, I think, are kind of soliciting comments here. We're at the public hearing, developing the financing plan. I think the town's intending to go out to bond. There were some federal grants; those are getting kind of iffy now. Whether they're available or not, we're not really sure what the new administration's going to do. So looking at some point, Chrissy can probably tell you exactly when, but for a town vote, and
The select board.
the select board, that's their duty. And so once this concept is voted on and approved, then then we would start on the next phase, which would be doing construction documents for it. The town would solicit for a construction manager, and it'd probably be about 6 months of permitting. We go through your local permitting piece on it, and then usually about 12 months for actual construction. So after the town vote, about an 18-month process before the building's kind of up and running. And also the number that we have here, just to note, that's not just construction, that's everything in it. That's the furniture, IT equipment, everything that you'd need to be a functional building, all of our fees, all of any permitting fees, everything you need. So the number that you're looking at is everything included, no other extras coming at you later. Turnkey. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, there you go. Turnkey. And I think that's it. We try to keep it kind of short and sweet, but I'm happy to go back on anything if anybody has questions. Okay.
Can you tell me if this has gone before code enforcement yet?
No, I have not run it by code enforcement yet.
Would you,
Is that site large enough to support the 12,000 square foot building?
It's a tight site, but yeah, it is, yeah.
The lot coverage is okay for all that?
The lot,
space?
yeah, the lot's huge. I mean, the lot's just this whole like kind of municipal complex. It's really was finding any place that was relatively flat to do it. So we walked all around, but once you get up closer to the transfer station, it's so steep, and we didn't really want to go to buy new land as well. So I think it'll work well here, and it saves the town money on not purchasing land.
Sure. And does the driveway for the new station come out onto the mountain road, or does it come out onto the access road?
It'll probably come out onto the mountain road. I think we're going to locate it downstream, either to one side or the other.
Be a little DOT work.
To relocate that driveway. So, right now in the study, we try to keep it to make sure that whatever we tell you is definitely whoops.
so folks either have to get up to the microphone or you repeat their question because folks at home need to hear it.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need to go back over? Okay.
We don't need to re-ask.
Okay. So the questions were generally, will it fit on the site? Yes, I think it's the best site, short. And it's in the other piece of it, it's really well located. Harpswell is very, with all the different necks, it's a difficult spot. You want to make sure that your response time to any incident anywhere, that we put it in the best spot to have a good response time for, wherever a call might be. So that's unique here, and and that you got all your peninsulas to kind of get around to.
You're going to have to repeat this. You might mention there is space on.
Yes, so we have 3 bays right now, and we've left room for an additional 4th bay for expansion. So, it's difficult to prognosticate the how much you're going to grow, how much you're going to need, but we feel just from our experience that with an additional bay and possibly maybe a small addition on it, that this would be sufficient for the future as long as we could see it for the town. So like I said, other Thomaston, other areas that were Berwick, that we've just done stations that are single station towns, similar size to Harpswell, are in the 12, 13 to 15,000, maybe 17 at the tops square feet for fire stations that take care of the whole town. Are you good? Are y'all good? Okay, great. Okay, well, you got to do the microphone now. Sorry.
you.
Okay.
I read your study and saw the designs and all that, but I did notice that you made a comment in the study that to get a true cost of the program with energy costs, life cycle analysis would have to be done, et cetera, which would cost another $25,000. Is that foreseen to be part of is that in the bid right now,
So-
or is it in the next phase?
So that really kind of started. So everybody got that question. So that was more not on the cost of the construction, but on the cost of operating this, because that's something that we want to look at for the town as well. How much are you? Because that never goes away. Every year you're going to pay maintenance and and energy costs for this building. So I can tell you that on the living quarters, so we went back and forth. Do we do the whole building pre-engineered? Save money at the start, and we really came to the conclusion as a committee that the living areas where you're going to be in there all the time should be sustainable, well insulated. So those we kind of kept in the wood frame, spray foamed insulated, and I can tell you that that's as energy efficient as it comes. And the bays, we would probably have unit heaters hanging in there. The doors open and close a lot anyway, so it's hard to kind of keep the bays, at a a warm temperature. But what you referred to as the like exactly how much energy how much is it gonna be? 5,000 a month, 2,000 a month. That's when you really, to get accurate, you have to go into a energy modeling, and that was where the 25,000 kind of came in. We can tell you the committee asked us, and Curtis, what were those numbers? 15 cents a square foot or something. So utility costs in other projects that we've done that are similar to this were about 15 cents a square foot, and compared to probably like 30 cents a square foot for like a pre-engineered version of this. So it is cost effective as much as we can do to operate. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Andy? Anthony?
Nobody's got any really hard ones? Come on. Okay. Wait, here we go. Wait. No.
Just a quick one. I was just looking at the parking lot, number of spaces, and I understand that, that's open. Once you start construction, you can change that. Wondering if the number of spaces tend to correspond to the size of the meeting room in any way, or the occupancy in that manner.
Yeah, that does impact it. I think we put as so there's people going to be visiting, burn permits, things like that. There's the staff that's there, and then there's an occasional meeting. So I think there'd be enough in the whole complex here that in a training that you could, if there was, we're right on the verge of that, I guess, right in around the building. But there are other opportunities to park in the complex, I think, for that occasional training that has a lot of folks in it. So, and probably up through where the TV station is and in that area. But those are things to be worked out. But in general, I think that's a solvable issue on the site.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we good with Andy here?
I can come back
Yeah.
if you need it.
All right.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy. All right, I think we'll move on to Harvey. Bo, he's got a. No pressure,
It's a
Terry.
last-minute decision. I wasn't supposed to do this.
I just saw a map on here.
Hold on. Sorry. Yep, there it is. Right.
Okay.
I'm Harvey Poe from Harpswell Neck. The Select Board had a variety of questions about the benefits that we would derive from the station. We've seen what it's like and what it will cost. So what are we going to get for that money? That's an incorrect slide, Gary. I see. Yeah. Well, we can go ahead with this.
This is what Jim wondered. Gosh.
The important thing were they closer, farther?
Stop.
Trying to work it.
Hold on, it might be me.
You did something in there, Mary Ann, because it was okay before.
Right. How's this working? I'm good. Okay. Response time is the most important consideration in citing a fire station because a house fire doubles in size about every minute. So getting there quickly is really important. The slide on the left, the picture on the left, shows the travel times as they are now. This map is from the 2008 report, and things have not changed from then, and they won't change unless we build the central station. So the travel times from the nearest station are shown by colors. 5 minutes or less is green. Orange shows 5 to 9 minutes, and red shows 9 minutes or more. The picture on the right is supposed to be showing what's going to happen with the addition of the central station. And what that will show is that with the addition of the central station, essentially all of those red areas will turn to green. So the northern part of the neck, Doughty Point, and a good deal of Great Island will turn green. So response times will go from 9 minutes or more down to 5 minutes or less. And the areas that will stay in the 5 to 9 minute range, the orange range, are the northern part of Great Island. So the location of the central station enormously improves response time, and especially to the northern parts of town, which are currently being underserved. I have the next slide, Terry. Yeah. Another thing that the Select Board asked us to address is the question of how far it is to a fire station if we add the central station. That's important in terms of insurance. Insurance companies are really happy if you're within 5 miles of a fire station, and they become less happy when you're farther away. And their unhappiness is manifested in various ways. They may charge more. They may limit the amount of coverage that they will provide, or they may simply refuse to write a policy so that your choice of insurance companies could be limited if you're more than 5 miles away. The current situation, and what will continue to be the situation if we don't build the central station, is shown on the left. On the right, with the central station, essentially everywhere in Harpswell is within 5 miles of a fire station. There are just the tip ends of a couple of the roads that are shown in red that are just over the 5 mile limit, but it will greatly improve the situation of Harpswell in terms of the rating agency that looks at insurance criteria. Are there any questions?
Yes. Could you tell us the mileage from the proposed central station to the north end by the Schofield Farm, and from the Harpswell Neck station, the north end of the Schofield Farm?
Please repeat the question.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
Harvey repeat it.
Yeah. The question was the
Okay. All right.
here we go.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Could you please give us the mileage from the proposed new station to the Schofield Farm, and from the Harpswell Neck station to the Schofield Farm?
From the central station, 5 miles north along 123, takes you all the way up to the intersection of Middle Bay Road. So it goes beyond Schofield Farm. From the Harpswell next station, 5 miles, takes you to just beyond Mountain Road, maybe half a mile beyond Mountain Road.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, if we could go back to the slides that show the times.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Sean Hall, Oars Island. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Oars Bailey Island Fire Department. And happy to be a volunteer. I just wanted to, restate that the reason that we have paid staff and the reason we're looking at a central station is because of what some view as sort of the imminent failure of the volunteer departments. It's getting tougher and tougher to recruit and retain people, as Chief Mercier's mentioned, and it's an ongoing struggle for us. We do the best we can. We provide one another with mutual aid, and there are times just recently where we don't have people, volunteers in town to respond to emergencies, and the paid staff has done that. As recently as 2 weeks ago on Oars Island, we didn't have people turn out. But I think when we look at these maps and we look at everything being green and happy, we're looking at a model that is dependent on the volunteer stations continuing to exist. It's been said since the beginning of the paid firefighter program that the paid staff is here to support and augment the volunteers, not replace them. But if we look at the failure of any of the 3 stations, we essentially have an inversion of those colors. What is presently in green on the maps there then becomes red. The northern areas are going to be covered pretty well from a central station, but anything south of the existing stations, we're going to see that red show up again. Another concern I have is we look at travel times, but population density is a factor, and we look at those areas historically which have had the highest service demand density, where we've had the most calls, and those areas are presently proximal to the existing stations. And I don't think the service density model has changed or necessarily those population centers. So my concern is, well, it's a couple of concerns. One, the model that we're currently engaged in doesn't work without the volunteers, and that's kind of a tenuous thing on which to rely. And secondly, I just wonder if there's a plan from the town or the fire rescue committee, when the volunteer stations fail, what is the plan B with respect to staffing and the use of the existing structures? And that's not something I've heard anything about. If they fail, what does that model look like then? So I just think that needs greater consideration, and that's I do want to see the volunteer stations continue to exist and serve the community, but it seems kind of a Sisyphean task at the moment. So just wanted to express that concern and encourage the Fire Rescue Committee and others to start thinking about what things look like when the volunteers fail. So.
That is absolutely correct about the importance of the volunteers. And their function will not change at all. The volunteer firefighters will be responding from their home stations with the equipment that they currently have. And they are essential because, as is very clearly described in that handout that Christy prepared, 2 municipal firefighters cannot extinguish a fire. It takes more trucks. We don't have a hydrant system, so you have to have tankers who are filling up from the dry hydrants and bringing the water to the fire. It takes an enormous response, and the volunteers are critical to it. The question of the centers of population is a little different. We analyzed where building permits for single-family homes have been issued since 2008, and Harpswell is moving north. 72.1% of the permits that have been issued between 2008 and year-to-date in 2025 are north of the current stations. So we're building a central station that we are looking at to work for 50 years, and we need to consider what the profile of Harpswell and the need for fire services is going to be over that duration. And it's going to be in the north because that's where there is still land available for development. Anything else?
Just a point to clarify,
Grab a microphone.
right, it's incorrect.
The map on the right is incorrect. I don't know how that got switched. There are some of the other formatting is wrong, but yes. If any, can I have the, So, with the central station, all of this is going to be green. The very tip of High Head doesn't quite turn green, but everything from about.
It's turned on.
Yeah, let me try.
Closer, maybe?
Yeah, it says it's on. Okay, I'll talk louder. All of Dowdy Point, where there has been a lot of building, will be green. And green will extend up around the corner of the bay here. These areas are going to continue to be orange. They're just too far from either the Cundy's Harbor Station or the Central Station. But it will be at least an enormous improvement. Any other questions?
And I'll just go to the left. So I understand and appreciate the trend in building, but that really doesn't address the issue of the dearth of coverage to those presently green areas on the maps should the central stations go away. And I'm imploring the Fire Rescue Committee and others to look at what it looks like when a department fails. Because I know when Chief Mercier came 7 or 8 years ago with concerns about recruitment and retention, and this model came into place, and it's been a great model so far. But if we have no one to drive the tank trucks, no one to do water shuttle, any of that, all of that's green right there will be red, and we're not going to be able to put out fires. So I don't know if there's a thought of having satellite stations there in the future that are staffed, or what we're looking at, or if there's an effort to kind of town-wide do a more robust recruiting effort for the volunteers. I know that we're drawing from a limited pool, but I just think there needs to be a public education component associated with the construction of the new station, emphasizing that the paid staff is here to augment the volunteers. I think that there may be a perception without a public education component with the role of the central station that it's replacing the volunteers. And I think that could impact both our ability to recruit and additionally our ability potentially to do the fundraising that we need to sustain and operate our departments. So,
yes, you're right. The volunteers programs are absolutely essential, and we need to maintain them. I hope there are a whole bunch of people out there watching this who are going to volunteer, because we need you.
Young people.
Yeah, young people. We are the people, in large part, who are fighting fires now are the same people who were fighting fires 20 years ago, and they're not as young as they were then. So this is a big issue. And I, with Sean and with the chiefs, I encourage
people to volunteer, and we have, as you know, Sean, because you've been part of it, been doing a lot of recruiting. We need to do that more. We need to find out if there are more effective ways of doing it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we still have a helmet for you, Kevin and David, so, you know.
What was that?
We've still got a helmet for you.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, thank you, Harvey.
Mine's home hanging on the wall.
Mine is too.
Yes, good afternoon. Dave Mercier, Harpswell Fire Chief. Part of the compensation in the event that we do lose a station is that by staffing a central station, just as we're staffing the current stations with the municipal firefighters, what we've done is we've increased our response time by eliminating the turnout time that's required by volunteers. When we have to leave our home, get our, like this weekend in a storm, get our vehicle cleaned off, drive to the station, get in the vehicle, and get to the location, we've added several minutes to the call. When we have a central station or we have firefighters stationed at our current stations, we have that immediate response because they're there, ready to go. So there is a balance that is struck because being available to turn out immediately allows that response time to be reduced considerably, so that those areas that are in the most southern locations are still getting a better response time than they would be getting from the volunteers. So is there some balance and trade-offs? Of course there is. There's going to be, but these are changes that are coming. But the response times will improve when we've eliminated that turnout time. Thank you.
Just to, first off, I'd like to say I completely agree with Sean. This is not a complete answer. This is a component of the answer to what our problems are. One thing that I can see from a historical perspective is when we began consolidating, David, Kevin, you'd remember when we started trying to do joint classes in the town between the three departments, one stumbling block was not having a centralized location. If we tried to have a class all the way in South Harpswell, people from Moores Island, people from Cundy's Harbor were hesitant to travel that far away because they were leaving their areas of town uncovered. If we had a centralized location, an actual fire station with a classroom, with parking facilities, with apparatus to respond, this would be a secondary support feature of the station. We can have an area where we can have EMS classes, we can have fire classes, we can have apparatus parking to bring apparatus from the three departments so that those areas of town are covered, and we can have joint learning less ponderously than we currently do.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to give the opportunity. There's a few people who have joined us by Zoom, and there's a chat going on with some questions, and I just wanted to give the opportunity to members on the Zoom platform to make comments. Christine, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, hello, Christine Donovan Hall. I live on Oars Island. I just want to expound on the volunteer piece of it. I know that the building is predicated on volunteer, and Sean brought up the need for, keeping volunteers. And I think we really are trying, we have to have volunteers. It doesn't, if one of the facilities fails, it puts an extra burden on the other two facilities. I know we haven't discussed that, but with Oars and Bailey Island Fire Department being centrally located, if one of the other two fire departments failed, it would put the burden on Oars and Bailey Island Fire Department. I just wanted to state that.
Yep.
Christine, You are right and wrong. The central station is going to be more central than Ors and Bailey. And the problem that we are facing now with the municipal firefighters, part of the week in Harpswell Neck and part of the week in Ors and Bailey, has to do with the travel times. So last June, there was a fire on Harpswell Neck about there on a day when the municipal firefighters were here in Ors and Bailey. They had to come all the way around, and it took 23 minutes. The response time from the central station would have been 9 minutes. On January 1st of this year, there was an automobile accident on the Cribstone Bridge, and that was a day, naturally, when the municipal firefighters were at Harpswell Neck. It took them 20 minutes to get there. It would have taken 10 minutes to come from the central station. So the central station
Like 2 minutes.
is definitely the most central location that's available in town, and it will shorten the distances. We'll, of course, be doing everything we can to maintain the volunteers in the peripheral stations, and they are essential, not just for response times, but because they bring apparatus that's necessary to fight a fire. But the location of the central station really is the most central in town.
So Harvey, I just want to state that that every department, when we have a fire, goes. It doesn't matter where you're located. You could be located at one of the 3 departments or the central station. For mutual aid, we all go. So that wouldn't change if we had a central station or if we didn't have a central station. And as it relates to recruitment and retaining of volunteers, what are the stations doing now to maintain this and to look into the future? I know what we're doing at Ors and Bailey Island Fire Department, but we need to have a comprehensive plan for the other fire departments in order to sustain this model into the future with volunteers and municipally paid fire departments.
Recruitment and retention is a significant issue. The departments are working on it. It's not what we're talking about now. What we're talking about now is response time from the central station. And David Mercier will tell you that when we had the fire over here, Harpswell Neck fought that fire by itself for 20 minutes before the municipal firefighters arrived. That's just a fact of life coming from here. Coming from here, they would have fought the fire for maybe 10 minutes single-handed. The central station is going to give us the best response times all over town. That doesn't say that we can do without the peripheral stations, but we want to put the municipal firefighters who are in the station can respond right away in a station, in a position where they can move to anywhere in town with the maximum speed.
Hi, Melinda Richter from Ors Island. I have a couple questions when you use response time. My understanding that the paid firefighters were to supplement the each station. But you talk about a 23-minute response time to an accident or to a fire, but that doesn't really tell us how long the response time from each station. It seems like if you're talking, I'd like to know the response time from each station and how you gauge that, because that seems to be an important part of the puzzle with this.
Right.
So I don't want to know about the paramedic. I don't want to know about the paid firefighters. I would really like to know about the average response time from each station.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, as I say, at present, makes a huge difference where the municipal firefighters are coming from. That's why it takes so long to go across the Mountain Road Bridge and down another peninsula. The response times, there are 2 factors in response times, and we have been somewhat confusing them. One is the travel time, how long it takes a fire engine to go from here to there once it starts. And turns out that the times that Google Maps give you are very accurate estimates of the time it takes an engine. I did some calculations of responses from to two fires. So what we call code 3 responses by the fire engines, lights and siren, and as fast as they can go. And the average is just about 40 miles an hour. And since the Google Maps uses in its algorithm the speed limit for the areas that you're asking it about, it really gives a very good, accurate estimate of the travel time. So you can calculate those for yourself from Google Maps. That is, in fact, how we got these data. The response time includes the time it takes the volunteers to get from wherever they are when a call comes in to the station to put on their gear and to start off. And that depends on indeed where they are. The fire call that we had yesterday, day before, it took Harpswell Neck 7 minutes from the time of the alarm until the fire engine left the station. That was the time it took 4 people you had, I think? You had 4 people responding? That was the time you had 3. That's the time it took the 3 people who responded to come from wherever they were when the alarm came in. So response time includes travel time to the station, from the station to the fire. The great advantage of the municipal firefighters is that they are in the station, so they don't have to spend any time getting there. They can start right away.
Thank you. But you gave us an estimate time, Melinda Richter again. You gave us an estimated time of 5 to 9 minutes before. So I would like to know how this will improve it from our central station. Like, I'd like a time, you know, because if we have to compare apples to oranges, it would be nice to have a time. So I assume that the Fire and Rescue Committee, in doing all this research, came up with average times.
Yes.
Could you give us those from each station to an average to get to the site?
I understand what you're asking. The average time to go from here to down here.
No, from the current stations.
From the current stations?
What is the average time that in using time as a reason?
Yes.
I'd like to know from going from the current station to a site, to a call, what is the average time for each of the stations, from where they are now to their population density in that area?
Okay.
I'd like a specific time.
All right.
If you're asking us to do apples and oranges, 7 to 9 minutes, I'm just wondering what the average times are now from each station.
From each station?
Yeah.
Those are the color-coded ones that you see here.
Yeah.
5 minutes or less, 5 to 9 minutes, more than 9 minutes.
So you found your average from each station, like from OBIFD to a call, their average would be?
Well, it depends on where the call is.
No, I know that. But I'm sure that in doing your research, you looked up average times.
Average,
I'm not. To compare it from what you're proposing to what the actual time is now.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding you.
You gave us a time of 5 to 9 minutes.
That's the travel time, yes.
As travel time.
Yep.
I'd like to know what the current travel times now are from each station, each existing station. What are the average travel times now to compare apples to oranges? No, I know. I said average.
But we do know that the meters have.
Yeah, I would love to hear the average.
Are you talking about the information you sent out a year ago?
I don't know.
What is the average time?
Well,
I mean, are we taking 10 minutes for each call average, or are we taking 2 minutes for each call average for the density area that each station is in? If you want me to buy 5 to 9 minutes,
right.
Is that's the right thing to do? I need to know if it's taking 2 minutes now, why would I want to buy 5 to 9 minutes?
Anywhere in this green area, this green area, this green area, the fire department can get there in 5 minutes or less. Okay. If it's here, it's going to be a lot less. If it's here, it's going to be more. If it's way up here, it's going to be 5 minutes. So the concept of average doesn't seem to me to make sense.
But you're getting us 5 to 9 minutes average for.
No, I'm giving you, that's not an average, it's a range, 5 to 9 minutes.
Harvey, I think what you're looking for right now.
David, grab a mic, go to the podium.
Let me try and open it up. I think one.
There's a big world out there watching us, Dave.
In the 2008 study, it looked at response time, which again was the total time from the firefighters leaving their house, get to the station, respond to a location. The study looked at that, and they came up with an average time of 14 minutes.
Okay.
I think that's what you're looking
That's
for.
what I'm looking for, yes.
And we've looked at that since then. So in the last, 8 or 10 years, we're finding it's the same 14 minutes. Because nothing has changed. The volunteers that currently exist, with the exception of a few, generally are living in the same locations relative to the stations, so that their response time to the station historically remains pretty even, with the exception of environmental conditions. So that what we are doing, we are reducing that time. We're reducing that time from 14 minutes to probably at least half, and probably in a range, as Harvey's been pointed out, that can be extreme. Up in the extreme areas, you're going to be at 9 minutes. But historically, with eliminating the turnout time with staffed people in a more central location, we're reducing that time in half. Is that what you're really asking for?
That's what I'm asking.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
There's also a question from somebody on Zoom as well. Now you can unmute, Mr. Vincent.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The earlier the issue was raised about the potential failure of the volunteer companies. Aren't we really saying now what we're proposing is a 4-station solution that depends on the 3 volunteer stations and improves response time across Harpswell?
Yes.
If we lose a volunteer station, isn't the reality that we're going to have to face on the neck a $1.3 million investment to put paid firefighters there, or in Cundy's Harbor, a $5 million investment to put paid firefighters there, or paid firefighters at oars? To have the response times that we're laying out, we need the 4 stations staffed. So to me, it's not a question of replacing volunteers. We're critically dependent on the volunteers. If we don't have the volunteer stations, we're looking at significant investments to maintain the same type of response that we have today.
This is a question that really should be addressed by the chiefs of the department.
And if I could add one thing, should a volunteer station,
Looks
should
like
a volunteer
back up
station
again.
fail?
All right. So I'm the one that talks a lot about sustainability. It's inevitable. The short answer here is we're aging out. The average age of the firefighters, of which I only have 6, is 65 years old. The average age of my rescue personnel is close to 70. I think we can all do that math, that without an influx of some new young folks, the volunteer stations are difficult to maintain into the future. So it's been my goal that if the future results in no coverage in my district of Harpswell Neck, where is my fire coverage coming from? Well, it can't come from OBI. OBI is 10 miles away from my station. That's unacceptable for the people in West Harpswell. It's got to come from a closer station. So by building the station now, we are preparing for that inevitability that's going to occur just simply because we're aging out. And now is the time to do it. You know, we always hear the phrase, it's never going to get cheaper. Well, it's not. But as being asked, when we need it, we're going to need it immediately. And that's not the time to be building a fire station during crisis management. This is our opportunity to plan for the future and be prepared for the inevitable. Thank you.
Chief, if I could. Chief, I agree 100%. And my point is, with the stations that we currently have, the central station would be built where it's being proposed, regardless of a failure of any of the volunteer stations, correct?
Perhaps you could repeat that, Gary.
We have the 3 volunteer stations supporting with the central station now. Should one of the volunteer, if the NEC were to fail, we would still have service. We would have service coming from the central station, and the central station is in the best position to do that for any future failure of the volunteer companies.
That's absolutely correct. That is, you know, the numerous effort that's been made to identify the best location, given our geography, it's been, you know, pointed out that is the ideal location, which provides the fairest, equitable service to the entire community.
And down the road, should Harpswell want to keep the same level, the same response times that we have today, we'd be faced with additional resources being placed geographically like the volunteer stations.
I believe we can serve the community well from a single central station staffed by adequate personnel. No community can staff for the horrific scenario that might take place. I mean, look what happened out in California. The fire chief out there said it would have taken 8,500 fire engines to respond to the Palisades fire. They didn't have that many in California. So no community can, you know, prepare for the absolute greatest demand. I think we have to prepare for the fires that we can handle historically and look at what type of calls we're getting and try to be physical responsible about building a fire station and staffing it to meet the current demands.
I completely support that, and I think down in the future, should we have a failure of a volunteer site, we should be communicating what the response times would be from the central station so that people are aware of how that's going to evolve going forward. Thank you.
Anybody else, Terry?
Not on Zoom.
No.
So I'm a taxpayer, and my name is Ellen Glue. And if anybody would benefit from this location, it'd be me, because I live right next door. I'm at 312 Mountain Road. So having said that, though, I have a lot of questions, and I had them in December, and I still have them. Some of you may have read my letters in the paper, but I come from it not just as a taxpayer, and I totally supporting our fire department and firefighters to the best of our ability. I totally do. But I also come from it from the standpoint of somebody who, in my previous town, I've lived here full-time since 2020. Before, when I lived in Massachusetts, I was on a committee, a town committee, that was trying to solve a similar problem, not the fire and police, but school, and a burgeoning school population, and how were we going to solve that? And there were 2 options, and got debated. Anyway, long story short, I was on the building committee, saw through to get the solution together and implemented the building, blah, blah, blah. So I'm speaking from some experience, and I have to say, what I don't understand is, why are we proposing a building for what I think the issue is, do we have also adequate firefighters to handle response times, et cetera. And those are two different issues. I mean, I get the building thing, but the real issue everybody seems to be talking about is recruiting, retaining volunteer firefighters, which everybody seems to think we still need. The purpose of this building is to put two already, I think, are they already here, the municipal firefighters in a location that's more central. Seems to me the more pressing problem is to look at the labor resources, firefighter issues, whatever. And I don't mean just that, but let's look at the picture. What are we trying to get to? What's the answer? Short term, in case something dire happens and we have an aging, firefighting force, but also long term, what is the solution? And it involves not just a building, but people, staffing, training, and all of that. And I don't see where any of that data has ever been gathered. I mean, I go back to my work in Massachusetts, but we had feasibility studies. They were independently conducted, not by people in town, because everybody in town has a vested interest. You want an impartial body, a comprehensive plan from an independent source, like you had with the 08 study, to look at what the solution should be, both short-term and long-term. And I don't see that it's been done. And I personally, as a taxpayer, would want to see that done before I vote to spend, $6 million on a building. I want to understand how it's going to be used. How are we going to take care of the firefighters? I mean, we could be looking at a number of issues. How can we recruit better? Can we build affordable housing for our municipal firefighters? That's another issue. So I'd like to see a comprehensive approach to the problem, and I don't see that as yet. And until I do, I'm not going to vote yes for a building when I don't understand what the purpose is. So, thank you. How can we recruit better? Can we build affordable housing for our municipal firefighters? That's another issue. So I'd like to see a comprehensive approach to the problem, and I don't see that as yet. And until I do, I'm not going to vote yes for a building when I don't understand what the purpose is. So, thank you.
I think she got two bites at the apple.
Build affordable housing for our municipal firefighters? That's another issue.
Gary, you need to mute,
I'd like
please.
to see a comprehensive approach
Gary,
to the
you're
problem,
playing
and
you-
I don't see that as yes.
Let me mute him. I can if I can get my,
Oh.
I'm glad
Just in
that
case
wasn't
we
my
didn't hear it the
voice.
first time.
Coming through somebody else's computer.
All right. So I'm Benjamin Wallace Jr. I'm the chief of Cundies Harbor Fire Department and Orson Bailey Islands Fire Department,
I can if I can get my
I've muted him.
and also the co-chair of the Fire and Rescue Planning Committee. So I spoke a little bit about this before the select board almost 2 weeks ago now. But I think all these questions are important questions, and they deserve answers. Those of us that have been doing this for a long time have addressed a lot of these in our own way through the years. I've had 5 meetings between January 23rd and 29th with first responders, boards of directors, and committees about this proposed station. And so I want to help clarify some of these questions by answering those questions. And the first thing I would say is, what is a problem statement? Just to clarify what the problem statement is, we're not seeing enough new people become volunteer firefighters to replace those that are aging out, moving away, or becoming inactive in Harpswell. This is a statewide and nationwide problem, and Harpswell is not immune. The fire departments need folks to join and go to the fire academy every year. And for the first year in recent memory, we're in a position where none of the 3 fire departments in Harpswell has a single student in the fire academy. At the same time, we've had firefighters move away, become inactive for various personal reasons, and the age of many of our firefighters are in the 60s and 70s. Those in their 60s and 70s cannot be expected to continue forever. Cundies Harbor has 9 firefighters, not including myself. 5 of them are active as firefighters. 1 is 64, 2 are 68, and 1 is 71 years old. Orrs and Bailey Islands also has 9 firefighters, not including myself. 7 of them are active as firefighters. One is 63, one is 71, and one is 76 years old. I don't have the numbers for Chief Mercier, but I think he shared those a few minutes ago. In the past, the fire departments have relied on many folks that were local tradesmen, such as carpenters and plumbers. They lived and worked locally, and they dropped their tools to respond on calls. They have all retired from being firefighters now, and we no longer are getting the young folks that work in town to join, which means fewer new firefighters with less availability. So question, what have the fire departments done to try to address a recruitment and retention problem? And to that, I'd say a lot. Speaking of the Orrs and Bailey Islands Fire Department specifically, and this isn't my doing, so I want to say it's people like Sean Hall and Muriel Longley and others. When I started as chief, the department had 1 firefighter on its roster. That was not enough, as the town found out when it was fined in 2015 when 1 firefighter entered a building fire just down the street from their station. When I joined as chief of OBI a couple years later, recruitment was already the priority, and they had started a serious rebuilding program. Initially, they were successful by asking folks that had left the department to come back. That had the added benefit of returning experience to the roster, and we were fortunate that folks that came back were not yet old enough to retire. In that way, we reinvigorated the ambulance, but it was just the beginning because we didn't get any experienced firefighters that way. It took over a year before we started to get some new firefighters trained and qualified. And by trained and qualified, I mean not to operate independently, but under direct supervision of somebody else with experience. Primarily, the problem is the fire academy is offered once a year and requires 6 months of training every Monday and every Wednesday night and all day Saturday. Most of our new folks aren't giving that level of time. That first group, however, is the bedrock that we rebuilt the department on, and many of those are now retirees. What have we learned when we were trying to recruit? 1, personal connections are important to recruitment. 2, and when I say we've learned this, that means we've acted on it. Follow up with new candidates needs to be fairly quick to retain interest. 3, we get a significant number of folks who volunteer to drive the ambulance and emergency vehicles or help out in other ways. But most of our new recruits are not going to the fire academy. 4, we've tried and continue to use online recruitment booths at public events, and road signs to get out the message. That's not all, that's just a few things. If you've gone down the Cunnies Harbor Road, you see 2 big signs that have been up for over a year now, trying to drive the point home. What if nobody responds? If you're here watching and you can carry 70 pounds of PPE and equipment while working at a high energy level and you have time to explore firefighting, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to introduce you to firefighting and bring you on board. Our recruitment number, for a plug, 207-544-5399. 5, we've been inventive, Mr. Hall has been inventive and I know as well Harpswell in tapping into non-traditional groups such as Bowdoin College students. OBI currently has 3 students that already have their EMT licenses, and 1 ready to respond, and 2 going through the onboarding process. However, this particular pool of volunteers hasn't developed firefighter candidates. 6, we do have 1 new firefighter last year that joined, and we sponsored him for the fire academy, and he's active. He lives in Brunswick. Takes some time to get here, but he does respond. 7, we've explored SMCC's Live-In Student Firefighter Program. I did that personally myself a few years ago, but we were declined due to demand by departments already part of the program and distance to the primary campus in South Portland. 8, we recognize our volunteers in various ways, such as a modest comp plan in line with the IRS rules for volunteers. We cannot significantly increase the compensation without running afoul of our volunteer status. 9, we brought in outside consultants on a couple occasions, even from out of state. Many of the suggestions brought to us require legislative action at the state and municipal level, and they're outside of the fire department's ability to address. Building workforce or affordable housing is a municipal issue that has been suggested. We've been talking about that for years. absolutely, at least 20 years that I know of. It's in the current comp plan, I believe, about affordable housing and the impact on volunteer services in town. There's a limit to what the fire departments can do. Tax breaks for the volunteers is a state issue. Those are just a couple to name a few. To be frank, there's no way of knowing if those things will be successful in Harpswell given the priorities of many new families these days. But in any case, we're not in opposition to those ideas. They're just beyond our influence as a fire department, other than to testify at public hearings, which we've done. Here's a question I've heard a lot. I think I heard it even today, but I've heard it probably more times than I can count in the last 5 or 6 months. How will a new building on Mountain Road fix a personnel problem? And that's because of the volunteer nature of the fire departments and the reduced number and availability of new firefighters. There may or may not be enough firefighters available to respond from the station in your district to your emergency. No station is immune to this, and we rely on mutual aid from the other two departments when this happens. We always have. If an incident happens to be in the district where the paid firefighters are on duty, and you get a prompt initial response because they're there. If they're on duty but not in the same district, you still get a fire truck out the door really quick. But it's significantly outweighed by the travel time. Uh-oh. See what happens? It's significantly outweighed by the increased travel time to the emergency from one of the other existing stations. For instance, it's already been mentioned, Friday the 31st, there was a car accident on Cribstone Bridge. Orr's Island had one EMT and one firefighter. Neither were able to drive the ambulance or the fire engine. The paid firefighters responded to fire engine from Harpswell Neck, and I had it down at 18 minutes. It was 20 minutes. I was giving them credit for stopping to grab another truck at Orr's Island on the way by. But the reality is, if they hadn't stopped at Orr's Island, they probably could have done it in 18 minutes. And that's right in line with Google, just as Harvey said. Our travel times are pretty accurate to what Google gives us. It took 18 minutes for that fire engine to arrive on scene. The paramedic responded from the Mountain Road, which is literally feet from where we're talking about building this new station, with a lighter and more nimble SUV, but still they did it in 8 minutes compared to 18 minutes. So one, the new centrally located emergency services facility will reduce travel times to the majority of calls simply because it is closer to all three districts than the current stations in the other two districts, which is where your mutual aid is coming from when nobody's available. Two, to provide the same benefit based on the hours of operation without the new station, more firefighters will be required, which is a higher expense. Staffing costs, typically in every paid fire service, are much higher than the cost and than all the other costs of the fire department combined. That's just a fact. Question, will a centrally located facility impact volunteer operations? Harvey already addressed this, but I'll repeat it. The volunteers will continue to operate from their own stations. The volunteers will respond to their station or the scene the same as they always have. The paid firefighters will continue to assist with the recruitment and training initiative for the volunteers as they currently do. The only fire truck being transferred to the new station is the town-owned fire engine at Harpswell Neck. They have another one, and they've already told us they can no longer staff both engines. There'll be no change in the dispatch and assignment of calls. The paid firefighters will continue to respond to fire calls in support of volunteers as they have since 2017, except from a new location. Question, will a centrally located station be staffed 24/7? Current planning calls for the staffing the new facility from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week to cover the volunteers when they're away at work. However, the station is designed to accommodate 24/7 staffing in the future. What other equipment will be located at the facility? Right now it's a paramedic, but the garage space is flexible to house other equipment such as town boats or emergency vehicles in the future. Tell us more about the capability of the facility. There's training spaces, administrative spaces. A lot of this we already covered. Let's see. These are some of the questions I've been asked about the proposal. The questions I've been asked are reasonable. We know we can answer the questions, and I'm happy to provide answers if asked. The bottom line is we have a limited resource, in this case our firefighters. Recruitment of new volunteer firefighters is not keeping pace with the town's needs. The town augments the volunteers with paid firefighters. It is important that they be located as central as possible to all areas of town to reduce response time, just like the paramedic is. We've had that experience now since 2012, I think, is when we started the paramedic, so we know it works. Moving them to the proposed station will reduce the response time to Orr's Island and Cundy's Harbor calls as much as 9 minutes on Thursdays and Fridays. Moving them to Mountain Road will reduce response times to Harpswell Neck by as much as 6 minutes and Cundy's Harbor by as much as 4 minutes on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays because they're at Orr's Island. This is with the same number of hours and the same number of paid firefighters the current town currently has. That leads to a faster response and better outcomes when the paid firefighters are responding from the central station and overcomes Harpswell's unique geography as much as can be done. One other question that was asked that I wrote down in pen that I didn't have typed up: what happens if the stations fail? And I should have typed that up because I've been asked a few times. First of all, God help us. Let's hope not, right? But I've shared this with the volunteer responders on a number of occasions. Even if every trained firefighter in town was located at this building, we still need people that can operate the fire engines, the tank trucks, the squad trucks, the ambulances, all of those things. And those things do not require the level of training or strength or endurance that it does to be a firefighter. That is our, I don't want to say the highest trained, but it is the most physically demanding job in the fire service, is to be a firefighter. Somebody that can't be a firefighter may well be able to operate a pump truck for us or operate a tank truck for us. All of those things we still need. So even if we didn't have any firefighters at Cundy's Harbor, we still need Cundy's Harbor's engine and its tank truck and its squad truck and its ambulance, right? We can still recruit drivers. We can still recruit EMTs. Those things we're doing. So those are the questions I've heard. Hopefully the answers are helpful. I suspect they don't answer everybody's questions, but maybe not here, but later, if somebody wants to reach out to me, I'll answer whatever I can as well.
Thanks, Ben.
This fireman needs his cane.
Kathy Hurst, 66 Lombos Hole Road. I'm suffering from a bit of a disconnect because I've heard a lot of we support, we need, we depend upon the volunteers without knowing very well that there isn't a concrete plan despite years of suggestion and recommendation and multiple reports that the town undertake this. And the fact that David Mercier has said, it's not if a station fails, it's when. And I almost felt like when he was standing up here, he was saying that he was underneath the current. I heard our station is going to fail, and we're glad to have a central station in place at that time. That's, of course, not what we want to hear. Now, many of the factors that contribute to the difficulties with recruitment and retention are not going to change. We have to understand them better. The Orson Bailey Island Fire Department Strategic Planning Committee formed a subcommittee, a working group, to undertake looking at recruitment and retention. We would very much like to continue that under the umbrella of the Fire and Rescue Planning Committee. We would like to know that all 3 stations are going to be involved. We would like the town to provide support, monetary support if needed. I am glad to lead this effort as I have been leading it at Orson Bailey Island Fire Department.
Just one more short one. In an effort to get an outside look at what we're doing, I met with Chief Ken Brilliant of Brunswick Fire Department. Brunswick just recently built a new station on Pleasant Street. And they also, if you're familiar, they built a new station, the Emerson Station out in Cook's Corner. So I sat with Chief Brilliant, who I've had the pleasure to know probably well over 30 years, and asked him to look at our proposal, look at our design, and make any suggestions. And he felt that what we were doing was right on track with his experience. I asked him about, when you built your station on Pleasant Street, a lot of us thought that's an awfully odd location. We felt Pleasant Street's a busy street. You know, how are they going to get in and out? You know, we always thought, some of us that have been around a while said, boy, I wouldn't have built a station out there. So I said to Chief Brilliant, what was your criteria? Why did you build here? And he said, as Harvey pointed out earlier, the number one criteria is response time. He said, I went back and looked at one of our earliest studies and found that this was the ideal location for a fire station to cover the west side of Brunswick. So the criteria, even for a large community like Brunswick, is still response time. The other thing he looked at, he said, was, surprisingly enough, was traffic pattern, which, again, I think some of us would question the location. But again, he dismissed the traffic pattern as being less of a factor than the response time, that they could overcome the traffic pattern with the control of the lights and other devices to improve their response. And so we talked about the location of a central station in Harpswell. You said, well, it's interesting you bring it up, Dave, because that was a subject of one of my papers for my fire science degree, was a central station. I said, well, Ken, it was mine too. I did it in 1982. I wrote a paper on a central station for Harpswell for my fire science degree. So we shared something in common there for a short time. His remarks to me were, he said, Dave, he said, I don't know why it's taken this long for you to have a central station. He said, I'm familiar with Harpswell. I'm your mutual aid partner. He said, I fully support the location of the central station and the proposal you've put forth. So, yes, we've gone outside the circle and have looked and spoke with somebody who I feel is very well respected as a fire service professional and got support for what we're doing. Thank you.
As far as staffing and planning for staffing, if Dave or Ben or Mike could answer that question about what we've done for high paid coverage and what we're planning to do, and hiring more staff people, and what the proposal is for that. Don't all speak at once.
Why don't you go to the podium? It works better.
Mike Drake, the fire administrator for the town. So as for the staffing questions, we currently employ myself as a full-time fire administrator. I have 2 full-time firefighters and 5 per diems that are on staff. The plan right now is to move those folks into the central station on a 06 to 1800 schedule when the volunteers are theoretically out of town. The theory is, we're going to go with the volunteers. If the volunteers sustain themselves well, we're going to keep that. If they start having difficulties during the nights or evenings, then we will be able to move to a 24/7 schedule system. That's why we've got the bunk rooms in there, all that stuff. We're capable of putting 6 people in there overnight. One thing I will say, we absolutely need the volunteers. They save the town a ton of money. They're irreplaceable in the response system, the way Harpswell is. I did a quick study on If we did lose one of the fire stations and we had to staff 4 people 24 hours a day at this station, you're looking at a raw labor cost without benefits of $1.2 million a year. Any other questions beyond that?
So is there a proposal to seek greater town funding for paid firefighters?
Repeat your question, Mike, please.
Is there a proposal to increase staffing? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, for the town, excuse me, for the town to fund additional paid firefighters.
At the March town meeting, we've got a proposal to move coverage from 5 weekdays to 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. There was felt a need. There's been a couple issues with the response on weekends. So it was reviewed by the Fire Rescue Committee, and they decided that it would be the best for the town to move to 7 days a week.
What about overnight?
If it comes to that point, then we're totally prepared to move and hire staff to do that. We really, really want to keep the volunteers. I've been a volunteer for 35 years in the town of West Bath. I recognize that volunteers are extremely important. The big problem that faces the town of Harpswell, like a couple other speakers have said, is our geography. And I like to use Wiscasset. Wiscasset's got a pretty similar population. Wiscasset has one station in the middle of town. But Wiscasset has Woolwich, Dresden, Edgecombe, Newcastle, all these towns that can come flooding in and help them if they have an emergency. We have to depend on Brunswick. Currently, Brunswick runs right around the area of 5,000 runs a year, and they're extremely busy for the staff that they have. They actually recently had a mutual aid request to Topsom to go to a working house fire, and they said, "We're sorry, we're all tied up, we can't send a fire truck." So that's another difficulty that we have to, really look at with our staffing down here. But the short answer is, we've got to remain fluid. The anchor asked me a few months ago, what's your plan for fire rescue services for the next 3 to 5 years? And I said, quite frankly, I can't tell you what next year looks like. We're going to need to, keep trying to recruit volunteers. Hopefully that's successful and we can keep going with just a couple of people in the station. But this station's going to fill the needs for the future of the town. And if we do need to staff more people in there, we have the ability to do it. Anything else? Anyone else while I'm here?
Yep.
That was easy.
Yep. Are we good on this?
Well, I have one more question.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's all right.
So this is for the selectmen, and all of this, could you give us the warrant wording?
It's on our website.
It's on there already?
Proposed for discussion at the Thursday, so thank you for the question, great
Yeah.
question. We, the staff, know this issue has been in the pipeline for a while. We have an article for the select board to consider at this week's meeting, and they will decide whether or not they want to move it forward to the March 8th town meeting.
Okay. And has this gone before Budget Advisory Committee?
The Budget Advisory Committee is having a special meeting next week to discuss any of the changes to the budget since they reviewed their budget recommendations with the board. That meeting is?
Tuesday at 2:30.
Super. Thank you. Then the last question is, what is this going to do for the mill rate? I haven't heard that yet.
So we tried to put a little information on this question and answer handout. And essentially, we've looked at, what does a $6 million bond look like? How many years would the town want to have in terms of paying it off? We, the staff, have kind of suggested a 25-year bond in the first year, which was probably not going to be until 2026. We wouldn't borrow the money until late 2025, and so the first payment would be in 2026. We're looking at about a $500,000 figure for principal and interest in the first year. It might be a little bit less than that, I think. And that information will be available as well. if we took that amount of money and applied it to like the proposed mill rate in the coming year, 2025, just saying everything else remains equal for the 2025 budget, we're talking about $20 per $100,000 value. So if you had a $400,000 valued home, it would be about $80 additionally in that first year for the principal and interest payment. As Mike said, we haven't really tried to project when we might need to add more paid personnel, but we will have to be fluid and flexible, and the town meeting voters will have to consider that at the appropriate time if we're not able to provide enough volunteer support for the system and the model that we currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Should I go to the podium?
Yes, please.
Probably. Hopefully you don't have to listen to me 3 times. Yeah, I just have a question. I think originally the town appropriated $100,000 for the building study. My question, so going back to that, the life cycle analysis and energy modeling would need to would cost $25,000. Are there funds still in the original appropriation of $100,000 to do that?
There are funds if the board decided that it wanted to do something like that. There are some funds available.
Okay,
in the
because I think that
planning
would
money.
be valuable information voters would want to have. So that's just my comment. Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Think hard. Anybody but Jonathan?
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. This is what you get when you call.
I know.
So I'd like to make a point about some of the words used. I'm Jonathan Burbank. I'm the president of the Cundy Suburb Fire Department. I'm a volunteer. I'm one of the young people in the firefighting group. That the system is struggling now to have qualified interior firefighters, okay? This is clearly a position, I'm just replicating the chief here for a minute. This is a young person's job, okay? But to make the firefighting system run, again, mirroring what the chief said, is a large contingent of other positions that support them. And because the town of Harpswell does not have hydrants, most of that system is intended to move water because we're fighting fires with water. And this is where I'm sort of speaking personally. I need to cease being an interior firefighter, as many people my age. But that doesn't mean that I'm not qualified, and I can't be qualified for a fairly long period of time to drive our engines, run our pumps, set up stuff for firefighting, okay, all of those things. So when people use the word failure in the context that we're talking about, what we're talking about is we need to solve the problem of interior firefighters. The volunteer system has a much deeper depth on using older people to do jobs that are required. And you can look with great success, and I'll just name this because it is, at the average age of the EMS system that we have in town, and the fact that over a very long time period, we've been able to get many of the people who arrive in town later in life to join us. And so I think that what we need to look at the central station is like, what is the best way to solve the problem of the interior fighter situation in the short run, right? The longer run is going to be it's not, someone earlier said, what if they fail? Okay, well, failure, let's hypothetically say they do fail. If they do fail, the only possible solution, right, is more staffing centrally. Right? Because you can't come from the other places. And we've had periods of time where some of the departments are really tight staffed and you have to come from another district. That gets old really fast and the service sucks, right? But the only solution you can come up with that makes any sense at all is having a way to have the managed central staffing map the gaps in the system. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, last chance.
We got people here for you.
There is a pretty well-documented system that combines volunteers and municipal. And I think that it might be worth starting to look at that right now as a possibility for the future.
All right, next to the last chance. Anybody else? All right, I think we're good to go then. Thanks, everybody, for your comments.